I was suddenly standing in my old workroom from when I was a kid. The shelves shook like someone had hit them, and long rolls of fabric dropped to the floor one after another. I turned around fast, ready to hide or run, and my dad was standing right there. He didn't fade in. He didn't look like a ghost. He walked straight toward me like he was solid and alive. He grabbed my arm with a strong grip. It felt real, not like a dream at all. His face wasn't calm. He looked serious, almost scared for me. He said, "Do not wear the dress Kyle gives you tomorrow." The floor shook harder. The whole room felt like it was coming apart. I gasped and opened my eyes in my bed. And my arm still hurt where his hand had been. Has someone you love ever acted in a way that didn't match their smile, and you couldn't explain why it felt wrong? If you've ever felt that small push in your chest telling you to pay attention, tap like and hit subscribe. Stay with me because this warning I got ended up saving my life. My name is Thessa, and I was 35 when all this happened. Most days I sat in my dad's old studio, fixing torn cloth and bringing old fabrics back to life. The room was quiet, and that was how I liked it. I liked the soft feel of cloth in my hands and the simple way a needle and thread could make something whole again. My dad's tools were still where he left them, lined up on the wooden shelf. I never moved them. I missed him every day, but working in his space made me feel close to him. His work, his lessons, and the things he left behind mattered to me more than anything else. My dad, Ocean, had worked with old fabrics, too. He taught me how to slow down and really look at tiny things most people ignored. When we worked together, he always said, "If something looks wrong, check it twice." Cale, my husband, was nothing like him. Cale liked to act like he knew better than everyone, even when he didn't. He walked into my studio and moved my things without asking, saying he was helping me. When we had dinner with family, he answered questions directed at me before I even opened my mouth. He changed the smell of our home, clearing out my dad's cedar scent and replacing it with his own sharp candle smells. Every time I came home, the place felt less like mine. I remembered something my dad once told me while handing me a piece of cloth with a ripped edge. You can tell a lot about people by how they handle small things. Back then, I didn't understand how right he was. The night before my birthday, the dream hit me fast and hard, and waking up from it left my heart beating too fast. Morning came, and Kyle walked into the kitchen holding a box like he had just come back from a store. He smiled wide, but the smile didn't look real. It sat on his face like something he practiced in a mirror. He opened the box and pulled out a blue dress. The color was bright, and the fabric looked soft from far away. When I picked it up, the smell hit me first. Something in the cloth didn't smell clean. It wasn't the kind of smell new clothes should have. When I ran my fingers along the inside, the stitches didn't match the way real work should look. They were sloppy, like someone rushed through them. Cale stood there watching me too closely, and I told him thank you and set the dress down so he wouldn't see the worry on my face. When he left the room, I called the dress shop he claimed to buy it from. The woman on the phone checked twice and said they had no order from him at all. I felt a small, hard feeling in my chest. I didn't tell Kyle anything. I folded the dress, put it back in the box, and slid the lid on. I kept my face calm, but inside something told me to stay alert. And after the dream the night before, I knew I could not ignore that feeling. I wore a different dress to dinner that night. I told myself it was because I wanted something comfortable, but I kept seeing the blue dress in my head. Kale watched me as I left. For a beat, his smile slipped. Then he put it back on and kissed my cheek like everything was fine. At the restaurant, the lights were low and people talked around us. Kale raised his glass and said something loud and easy. I tried to eat, but my hands felt heavy. Every time he reached for my hand, I pulled away a little. He noticed and smiled small, like he thought he had won an argument without having one. After we went to bed, I heard his laptop open from the table in the study. I told myself not to go look, but I walked down the hall anyway. The screen glowed blue in the dark. There were messages open and the names jumped out at me, Cale and Lorianne. The words on his screen were short and cold. They talked about the plan. They wrote numbers and dates. They wrote insurance and a money amount. I read one line that said they would get money when something happened. My legs felt like jelly. I sat on the edge of the chair so I wouldn't fall. I closed the laptop very slowly. The click of the lid sounded loud in the quiet house. I pressed my palm flat on the table and breathed in, feeling the grain of the wood under my hand. I did not shout. I did not run to him. I walked back to bed and lay there awake until morning. knowing I had seen something I could not unsee. The next days got worse with small moves that built into a wall around me. KL started saying things like I was tired or imagining things. He leaned close, put a hand on my shoulder, and told me he could handle everything. He sounded kind, but his eyes did not match his voice. I felt a chill when he touched me. He told me to rest and let him manage papers and calls. He said it like a favor. I nodded, but inside I felt like I was being boxed in. One afternoon, he walked into my studio while I was working and did not knock. He picked up my father's old pincushion and turned it in his hands. He moved a stack of my notes and put them on a shelf without asking. I watched him do it, my fingers still on the cloth I was mending. He told me to sign a paper for the estate and handed me a pen. I looked at the page and the words blurred. He watched me sign like someone watching a game he already knew he had won. I signed because I did not want to make a scene, but every time he left the room, I found another note missing. As days passed, his voice grew sharper. He started talking about how we needed to act as one team. He said I should stop resisting changes and that those who did not cooperate could cause problems. He used the word like a tool, light and threatening. He set deadlines and said we had to move quickly. The small kindnesses that used to be there were gone. He watched me with a quiet intensity that made me pull my sleeves down over my hands at night. One night the house smelled wrong to me. The living room smelled like his candles again, but under that there was a chemical edge I could not place. The dress box sat on the table like a quiet thing waiting. I sat with my tea until it went cold. The studio felt empty, except for the hum of the fridge. I touched the box with one finger and felt the cardboard rough and ordinary. I told myself I was acting paranoid, but my father's voice from the dream pushed me. He had told me to listen. I took the dress and the box in the car and drove to Reeves' lab. The streets were nearly empty and the heater in the car made the window steam a little. I held the dress folded on my lap and breathed slowly so I would not shake. Reeve met me at the door and did not ask many questions. He took the fabric with gloved hands and placed it under a machine that made quiet whirs. When he looked at me, his face went still. He showed me a strip of paper that changed color near the seam. He said there was a chemical on the lining that should not be there. He used small words, the kind you use when you do not want to frighten someone, but his hands told a different story as they moved. He said it matched a compound that could cause a person's heart to stop if it touched the skin in certain amounts. He said it like a fact, not a story. I stood very still. The lab smelled sharp and clean. My breath came slow. Time did not feel like it was moving right. I pressed my fingertips together hard until they hurt. For a long moment, I just looked at the dress and the clear bag Reeve had sealed it in. Then something inside me made a choice. I felt tired of pretending not to see. I felt tired of letting things be decided by other people. I went home with the sealed bag and a paper envelope. I put the envelope in my drawer. I called a lawyer and sent copies of the lab result and what I had seen on the laptop. I stopped pretending I believed Kyle when he said things in a soft voice. I started making plans that did not need his permission. Would you trust a warning like that? Tell me below and hit, like if you're with me. I woke up the next morning knowing I could not guess or hope anymore. I needed proof I could hold in my hands, not just thoughts in my head. I sat at my desk and laid everything out. The lab results from Reeve were first. The numbers and notes were simple, but the meaning behind them felt heavy. Then I opened my phone and saved every message I had seen on Kyle's laptop. I took screenshots of each email between him and Lorian, each line about money and dates. I printed them and watched the paper slide out of the printer, one sheet at a time. I called the dress shop again and asked them to send me a written note saying they had no record of Kale buying anything. They emailed it within an hour. I printed that too. Every page made a small stack on my desk. When I looked at it, it wasn't just paper. It was the truth sitting right there in front of me. I put each sheet into a folder with a firm cover so nothing would bend or fall out. The folder felt solid in my hands. Nothing like guessing or doubting. Something inside me started to feel steadier. The dress stayed sealed in the clear bag from the lab. I placed it near the folder, not touching it, but close enough to remind me why I was doing all this. Every time I looked at that bag, I felt a cold wave move through me. That dress was proof too, even without words on paper. I slipped the bag into a larger envelope so no one would see it by accident. By the afternoon, Kael came into the kitchen smiling like he had good news. He said he was planning a family dinner for the weekend. He wanted everyone to celebrate my birthday properly. He talked about food and decorations and who he had already invited. He sounded excited, but he looked too controlled, like he was watching my reactions with each word. I stood there and listened. I did not interrupt him. I nodded at the right times, but inside, something clicked into place. A dinner with family meant many eyes, many ears. A place he would not expect me to speak up, a place he thought he owned. I decided that was where I would bring the truth. I waited until he left the room before I opened the drawer where I kept the folder and the sealed bag. I took them out slowly and placed them into a plain tote bag. As I did, I noticed my hands. They were steady. No shaking, no twitching, no tightening, just firm, calm movements. It surprised me for a moment. I stared at them and felt a strange sense of strength settle into my chest. For the first time since the dream, I was not scared. I was prepared, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. The dinner came faster than I expected. By the time we walked into the house where the family was gathered, people were already talking and laughing. Plates clattered, chairs scraped, and the smell of roasted food filled the room. Everyone greeted Kael first. He walked in with a big smile, shaking hands, touching shoulders, acting like a man with nothing to hide. He spoke loudly, making jokes, pouring drinks, patting people on the back. I stayed quiet. I sat at the long table with the leather folder right beside my plate. I kept one hand resting on it so I wouldn't lose my nerve. My tote bag with the sealed dress stayed by my chair. I watched Kael move around the room, acting proud of this dinner he planned, like he had done something kind for me. He didn't look at me much, and when he did, it was quick, as if he wanted to make sure I was still in my place. And when everyone had food and the room became calm, voices lowering into a soft hum, I pushed my chair back. The legs made a sharp sound on the floor. The room grew still. People looked up, waiting for me to speak. I stood up. I held the leather folder in both hands and set it on the table where everyone could see. Kael's smile froze for a second. He tried to keep it, but it slipped like he wasn't fast enough to pull it back. "I want to show you all something," I said, keeping my voice steady. I opened the folder and took out the first paper. "This is from the dress shop," I said. "They said Kael never bought the blue dress he gave me." Some relatives leaned forward. Kael let out a small laugh, but it didn't sound real. Next, I pulled out the lab report. "This is a test from a lab. They found something inside the dress lining, something that can stop a person's heart if it touches the skin." A fork dropped somewhere down the table. No one spoke. Kael's smile was gone now. His eyes darted from me to the paper, then to the guests. "She misunderstood something," he said, lifting his hands a little. His voice shook. I didn't answer him. I placed the printed emails next. "These messages are between Kael and a woman named Lorian. They talk about a plan. They talk about insurance money. They talk about when it will happen." Someone gasped softly. I laid the last paper on the table, the insurance documents with his name on them. "This shows he gets money if something happens to me," I said, dead. Kael took a small step back. His face went from confusion to anger, then to fear. His throat bobbed as he tried to swallow. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I kept my eyes on him. "You tried to hurt me," I said, "and now everyone can see it." The room was silent. The silence broke when there was a knock at the door. 2 sharp knocks, the kind that makes people hold their breath. Someone opened the door, and police officers stepped inside. Their radios crackled softly. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows, sliding across the walls and people's faces. Kael's whole body jerked. "There's been a mistake," he said quickly. "This is all wrong. She's confused. I can explain." But his voice shook so badly that even he seemed to hear the truth inside it. The officers called his name and asked him to step forward. He tried to look calm, but his hands trembled. He looked at each person in the room like he was searching for someone to defend him. No one moved. No one spoke. Even his closest relatives turned their eyes away. When the officers took his wrists and placed the cuffs on him, he didn't fight. He just let out a long breath, like he finally understood he had lost. They led him out of the room, his steps uneven. I picked up the folder, closed it, and placed it under my arm. No one tried to stop me or ask questions. I walked out of the room quietly, leaving behind the noise of voices rising again, all of them saying his name with disbelief. Weeks passed before the house felt calm again. At first, the rooms felt too quiet, like they were waiting for someone to walk back in, but slowly that feeling faded. I opened the windows one morning and let the air move through each room. When I stepped into my studio, the cedar smell from my father's old oil hit me right away. I hadn't noticed how much I missed it until that moment. It made the place feel like mine again, not something someone else tried to control. I went back to my routine, one small step at a time. I folded cloth on the big table. I sorted threads by color. I fixed a tear on an old jacket and felt steady doing it. The house no longer felt heavy or unsafe. I walked from room to room without waiting for a voice behind me. Even the kitchen felt different. The sharp candle scents Kael had brought in were gone. I replaced them with the warm, simple smell my dad always used, and the house finally felt like home again. I still thought about my dad every day. I wished he could have walked into the studio and told me what he saw, the way he used to, but missing him didn't feel like a hole anymore. And it felt like a quiet reminder to stay awake in my own life. He warned me once, even from the other side, and I knew I needed to listen to things I noticed, even the small ones. The leather folder sat in my drawer. I didn't take it out much, but just knowing it was there kept me grounded. It reminded me of what almost happened and what I stopped by paying attention. I learned that trust in myself wasn't something to fear. It was something that kept me alive. I felt stronger now, not because everything was perfect, but because I finally believed what I saw with my own eyes. What would you do if someone you trusted crossed a line this severe and expected you to stay quiet? Share your thoughts in the comments because stories like this remind us how important it is to listen to our instincts. If this meant something to you, tap like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss another story. And take this with you. You deserve safety, honesty, and a life where you don't have to second guess the people beside you.